thank you for making the effort to come into the Dr. Leagues Club tonight. Peter Chefsky is my name for some of the people out there that I haven't met personally. I do referee locally here in the Football South Coast competition. But we do thank you here for making the effort to come tonight. It's an extraordinary type of gathering we have here tonight because of the junior titles that are on here in Wollongong, and we're privileged to have some refereeing royalty here, if I can use the word, without embarrassing them. That's not you, Rob Sindeski, by the way. You may well be. But as I said, we do thank you on behalf of Football South Coast for making the effort to come here tonight, and some life members as well too. And the whole focus tonight is to, and you as the audience as well too, the opportunity to ask questions to the gentleman that we're going to call up here very shortly, from an AR point of view, to refereeing point of view, and of course from a local point of view as well too. So, Alex King, if I can ask you to take a seat up here. Alex is 32 years of age, he's from Queensland, he's the 2024 A-League Grand Final referee, and 2021-2024 A-League Referee of the Year, and regarded in many circles as currently being Australia's #1 referee. 2019 he became a full-time referee with Football Australia. 2020 became a FIFA international referee and an experienced VAR match official. Could you please welcome Alex King. They're all going to get it, Alex, don't worry about that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Kearney Robinson, 32 years of age. He's from Sydney. He's an A-League assistant referee since 2015 and has officiated over 120 matches in the A-League. Become the FIFA International Assistant Referee in 2022 and has been a video match official since that year as well too. The A-League Grand Final Assistant Referee in 2020-2024, 2 Grand Finals. A-League Grand Final VAR 21, 22 and 23. He held roles with Football New South Wales, Capital Football, which included being appointed referee manager. Kearney Robinson, welcome. And a gentleman that's hopefully all very, very familiar to us, 48 years of age, Strebre Delovski. Retired in 2016 as an active referee, refereed 140 A-League games, including the 2010 A-League Grand Final and many Sydney and Melbourne derbies. FIFA referee from 2009 to 2016, was voted Referee of the Decade by the Players Association, was the face of VAR in Australia in 2017 and become the first person in the world to go live with the technology in the first A-League of any country. Strebre, you wrote this, so I'm reading this way, by the way. 2019-21 Director of Referees and 2022 to 2024 CEO of the Wollongong Wolves. Do you notice the way his bio is the longest of every one? But anyway, could you please welcome Strebre? Have we all put our microphones on? We're trying to figure out how to put them on. Johnny, you want to sort of help them? That was your job, Phil Torby, to set this up, wasn't it? Yes. Alex, Kearney, Strebre, all good with the mics?
Yes.
So, and we'll have a roving mic as well too. You'll all have an opportunity to ask a question. We want to make it somewhat, obviously we'll have some structure here, but informal in the sense that you have an opportunity to ask questions if your questions haven't been answered as well too. But so we're going to concentrate from a refereeing point of view. Alex, do you want to talk us briefly how you went across from the grassroots refereeing to A-League and some of the challenges you face? So if you could start from where you started from, if possible, and talk us through it, please.
Yeah, no worries. So I started on the Sunshine Coast as a 13-year-old. For some reason, I just really enjoyed refereeing. I thought it was pretty interesting, and for some reason, I just really enjoyed it. So obviously starting there, it's sort of, I see myself sort of the same as people in this sort of region. Like they used to consider us rural, but it wasn't really rural. You know, it was good surf, it was a nice place to live. So because I was a bit younger and I was pretty keen, they were like, oh, we may as well give the young fella a crack and stuff the game up, because we can give the old bloke a crack and he'll still stuff it up anyway. So it was quite good that they gave me the opportunity at a young age to do men's football.
So, Alex, how did you actually, the first time you blew the whistle, ever, how did it happen?
I think my mum and dad were president at the local club, and I had to go out and do some under 8s or under 9s when it was a little bit different. I don't know how it works now with the small sided games, but it was just a little bit different. For some reason, I just really enjoyed it, and being on the coast was a great place to learn. Like I said, a lot of people in this room probably get exposed to senior football at a young age, which I think if I didn't have that when I was younger, there's no way I'd be where I am today, because I learned quickly as a 16-year-old with like long hair, sweep over. Like I learned pretty quickly what I can and cannot say to grown men. So I think from that point of view, in the community and grassroots football, that's what helped me and shaped me to be the referee I am today. So it was a lot of hard work, obviously, but I did 10 or so years, and then about 22, I got on the A-League as a 4th official, which was pretty lucky back in the day because we didn't really get a chance at that age. And then had my first go at 25 in the middle, and the rest is history.
And so you actually refereed, like we are here with Football South Coast. What was your local association then?
Yeah, so it was the Sunny Coast, Sunshine Coast region referees, whatever it used to be called back then. And it wouldn't have been very big, it would have been the same as this, I reckon. And yeah, just because I was so young and I was keen, there was opportunities. So yeah, pretty lucky. And
then you went, I assume, to the Queensland State League competition?
Yeah, so because it wasn't hard to become number 1 on the Sunny Coast. But the old boss said I had to become number 1 on the Sunny Coast before I could then move to Brisbane. So when I got to do the grand final at 18 on our Premier League. From 18, and they said, I was lucky that there was a guy called Barry Such involved, and he said, have a crack on it was called the Queensland State League back then. That was our top level, the old NPL, or it is the NPL. And I did all right. And because from the Sunny Coast, it was almost like, they always gave a spot to someone from the Sunny Coast to be on the State League. So because there was no one else and there was just me, that's why I got the opportunity again at a young age. And I did a few years in the NPL, or State League, and then the NPL, did the grand final there, and then as soon as I'd done the grand final at 21, they then put me on the A-League after that as a 4th official. Yeah, did for 3 years, learning from people like the 48-year-old.
They say that refereeing to a degree is an old man's game, but you've done a grand final at the age of 18, and what's your view on that? If you old enough, if you're good enough, or?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, if you want to give the youth a crack, if they go out there and make mistakes, and it's just learning. There's young players who want to give young referees a chance, and I think, but then again, if you're old enough and you're good enough, then it's the same way. I just believe it should be on merit in anything you do, but I definitely feel now as I get older, with more experience in that, you sort of get a little bit better with age.
A bit smarter, hey?
Somewhat. Depends who you ask.
But from the referee point of view, because obviously we have a lot of younger referees here that are a part of our RDP program, Referees Development Program. Some of the sacrifices you have to make, and I know as a young fella, and we discussed it downstairs, you and a young lady as well too, the temptation, you finish school, very keen to referee, while you're at school, maybe that first year out, and you start going out and nightlife, etc., etc. Some of the commitments that you had to make.
So I always made sure that if I reffed on a Saturday night, I'd always head out after. But there's always sacrifices, obviously. Sometimes this is something I've always wanted. From about 19, I sort of looked and thought maybe I could make a career out of this. At the time, full-time refereeing wasn't available when I was 19, so I didn't think. But from that age, I just thought this is all I want to do, and I still made sure that I was training and doing the right things, because at the end of the day, I get to do this job, and it's the best job in the world. I get to travel with mates to different countries, different states in the A-League, and get the best seat in the house, watch some footy. So the sacrifices are well worth it. The relationships, it's tough being a referee. I'm always away and all the rest, so it is always hard on partners and stuff, and it's all about sacrifices, and I don't look back on anything with regrets.
Alex, you became a full-time referee in 2019. You're one of only 4 in Australia. Tell us a little bit about what that involves, being a full-time referee, so more or less just asking you what your week involves.
Yeah, so luckily enough, Jared obviously went to the English Premier League, thankfully. Good riddance. So that obviously opened up a spot for me to go full-time, and at the time I'm a carpenter by trade, so I thought, blow a whistle or swing a hammer. I probably prefer to blow a whistle for a living. So it was a little bit of an adjustment. Obviously I didn't really know what to do with myself, but like an average week for us, we got to train 4 to 5 times a week, and then including a game, whether that be, normally Mondays just a gym, steady run. Tuesdays you always got your high intensity. Wednesdays gym and something else like recovery. Thursdays will be like a sprint session, and then your Fridays, if you're not on a game on a Friday, will be like a match day -1 session. So it'll be a 30-40 minute session just to get the legs ticking over, and depending on travel where we got to go during the week, and if I'm staying for a VAR or so on, it depends on the weekend. But I train hard when I have to in the mornings, and then the day is mine. So
Alex, post-match, what's involved? A debrief post-match. Obviously, there's a lot of video sessions, etc. So how is your game scrutinised from the video session, etc.? Is the question I'm asking as well too.
So straight after, we normally hear from the matchday coach on just a group WhatsApp message that might say, "Oh, look, all good." But if it's been a bit of a hectic game or something, you might get a phone call from them just to talk about some certain decisions. But myself, I know as soon as I get off the ground, and if I look at a video of something, I'll know straight away if I've had one or not. So we sort of don't go into depth right after. We sort of give it a little bit of time, because for me, I don't respond well to matchday coaches straight after a game, because I'm obviously thinking about what I'm doing and how the game was, and you're a bit amped up, and you're like, no, I don't want to, unless it's positive, I don't want to hear it. So it's normally like on a Monday, normally we then have a meeting with the matchday coach, and we'll obviously get our clips sent to us, because we have, with the VAR now, we have access to the clips a lot quicker. So they'll be, I think the clips are normally done on the Sunday, so if we want, we can peruse, and then the matchday coach will send the ones they want to talk about, and then hopefully by Monday, Tuesday, it's all wrapped up. We gather the learnings and what we need to do, and if we've had a bit of a tough game, it's important to understand the mistakes, learn from them, but then you've got to bin it straight away, because otherwise, if you carry it on to the next week, probably have another average game or something.
Look, I know this is unscripted. On this topic, has anyone got any questions to ask? There you go, Robert.
Pre-game diet, what's your pre-game meal, and how do you?
That's the question we were going to ask, but the good question.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to look like this athlete down here. So I'm a bit of I don't know. I think I've got stomach issues or something, but I can't eat 7 hours before a game. It's just, I don't know if it's a nerve thing or it's I don't know, my body's, it's just weird, but I can't eat 7 hours before, otherwise I feel sick. And then normally for me, if it's a nighttime kickoff around 7:45, I usually do the Saturday nights, don't I? So then I'll do sometimes I do pasta if it is that 7 hours, but I only do it because everyone else does it. For myself, I'd rather just do eggs on toast if I could, just something plain and boring, because just everything else makes me feel sick. So yeah, that's my pre-match. Maybe a choppy bar if I'm feeling a little bit hungry.
But pre-match 7 hours you're talking about?
For me, yeah, 7 hours.
The night before?
Whatever I feel like. Yeah, I don't ever try and one thing. Jared actually gave me this good advice when I first got on the league. I used to think, I have to have this regimented, I've got to eat at this time, I've got to eat this, and I've got to have a nap at this time, and I've got to do this. The problem is, what happens if your flight is delayed and you can't do this, and then, oh no, you can't sleep, in your head you're thinking, oh no, I haven't done these things, I'm going to have an absolute shocker tonight. So Jared always said, like, who cares, it is what it is. Like, you can have your sort of, like, you know, if you got to drink water or whatever, you can have your certain things, but don't be too regimented, because when things don't go right, well then you might end up talking yourself into an average game or something. So, yeah.
You refereed the A-League Grand Final last year. Obviously, we all want to know what the feeling was like and how you managed the game, preparations, etc. So it's a very unique situation. We have someone like yourself. We do have a person there that did it many years ago, of course. But you can tell us.
Yeah. No, it was really cool actually to do the final. During the week, I was pretty anxious because I actually thought the way.
How are you notified that you've been successful in refereeing? So what's the process for that?
Well, I had a pretty good season, so I'm a pretty confident guy, I would say. So I sort of had an inkling that I was going to do the final, just because I had a good semi-final, I had a good year, and I thought, it's got to be my turn finally. I got a phone call on the Monday from the boss saying that if I was busy and if I'd like to do the game. I didn't have much on that Saturday night, so I figured I'd have a crack. But no, it was really cool to do. It was a bit, like I said, it was probably the week I was a little bit anxious, because it's obviously our biggest game in the calendar year, and I just really wanted to do well, and I didn't want refereeing to be on the spotlight. I was a bit anxious. I just wanted to get there, do the game, and then worry about it at the end. So yeah, it was cool to be out there. When we first walked out for the warm up, I thought it was pretty cool. When I saw Mum and Dad up in the stands and my partner and all the rest, and I thought, you know, it's pretty cool. I felt like something I'd worked so hard for was finally almost there. You know, that's football. It was exciting. I thought it was a really good grand final, and I guess when I finally blew the final whistle and it was done, it was more relieved, and I just knew then I could really celebrate. So.
And the preparation for the game, no different than any other game?
No different. Still did a normal training week. But nothing changed for us. It was all business as usual.
It being such a big game, what's interesting, the coordination with the media, etc. How do you brief with that? Because obviously there's certain timelines, etc.
So obviously when we get there, we have our certain times that we got to go through things. But I mean, it really didn't change much for us. We had a few more people in the change room, but other than that, it was just take it as any other game. Really, like you just have to. Like, it is important and stuff, but you just got to treat it like everything else. Like you got to go out and referee every game like a grand final. So it felt like I rehearsed what I wanted to do and just had to do it.
Alex, the FIFA referee, what's involved with your when you get an overseas appointment? As
obviously there has been down the end, has had them as well. We get an email from AFC just sort of asking for availability, and at the moment their season's about to start. So, you know, it's just about accepting the appointment and making sure we're ready when we've got to leave. Normally it's a 5 to 6 day sort of app. Normally you leave 2 to 3 days before the game, depending on where we have to go in Asia. And then obviously we do the game, fly out next day, and then get home whenever we do. So
what is it about you? What are your best qualities as a referee that you think really helps you be successful?
So for me, I base everything I do on man management, in everything in life. I still have a couple of businesses in Brisbane that I still run. I've had it for a few years because I think it's important to have something outside of sport, just in case, you know. But I honestly think, like, I base everything I do in life, I just base off man management. But I think hard work always wins. Like, you know, when you always see people always argue about Messi and Cristiano and stuff, and I'm a big Cristiano fan because I don't think he's got as much talent as Messi, but I think he's a harder worker. And I honestly think that hard work always wins. If you are committed to something and you really want something and you're prepared to commit to do it no matter what, I think that's the way to be successful. And that's like how it's just what I like to achieve, how I achieve these things in life, I think. And that's with refereeing. But I do think, like, you do make your own luck instead of saying I was fortunate enough. I think that's probably man management.
Alex, just the last little question before we move on. We're all sitting here as association referees with Football South Coast, and some of the guys have all ventured into Football New South Wales as well too. So you were one of us before. What's the best bit of advice I guess you can give to the members here today? And either we'll talk about from a local grassroots point of view and a refereeing attitude, etc.
If this is what you want to do it.
Ladies, can we please thank Alex King? You are free to interlude too throughout the course of the
I only get
question.
talk.
So we've heard from the refereeing side of the A-League competition, and now we're going to focus on the AR assistant referee side. And Kearney Robinson is here tonight, and he's currently one of Australia's top assistant referees, and he was appointed to 2 grand finals, including last year's with Alex. But prior to asking you those types of questions, we do have members out there that are quite focused on being an AR while they're referees, etc. So what made you go towards the field of, towards the discipline of being more of an assistant referee from being a referee? And because some of these people out here are possibly going to follow that journey.
I obviously thoroughly enjoy refereeing, and I guess there are some people that are going to be more talented at refereeing or assistant refereeing, one way or the other. My talent, I think, coming through the development system and the ranks, my talent probably was with refereeing. I was a tall, sort of gangly person that could run, I suppose, and I could blow a whistle, I guess, to some degree. So I was always sort of identified as a ref and having some potential as a ref. But I think I knew, and I think once I got to the stage where it was becoming more professional, at a youth level, but certainly where it was coming towards, working with players and colleagues that were at a more elite level, it was very apparent to me that my skill set or my personality was better suited to being an assistant. Sitting amongst these two up here at the moment can be a bit of a daunting thing, just because they're quite extroverted, and I'm probably the opposite. But I think the important thing is just sort of, for me, it was about sort of finding my place and figuring out what I wanted to get out of the game and what opportunities that I had. Obviously, again, assistant referees have to be fast and sharp and agile and all that sort of stuff. And again, being tall and skinny, that's not exactly, my body isn't exactly suited to that, but I had to work at that, and that's obviously something that I wanted to do, and I was lucky enough to get opportunities, I guess, because I worked for it. But yeah, I certainly think, looking around and thinking about, well, okay, how many referees in the A-League? 13?
Obviously someone's told you, whether you've been an AR before, that obviously you're very good at that. So what age was it when you sort of really started focusing on being an AR, or you'd refereed for X amount of years, and 5, 6, 10 years, and you went to the discipline of being an AR?
Yeah, sure. So obviously I've been from Sydney. I started out with Northwest Sydney football, so on the other side of the bridge. But and then, similar to what the system is now, there was an RDP which covered the youth NPL competitions, and obviously going through the ages and the levels in that. And I obviously, you would obviously referee, and then you would hold a flag for the other age groups. I think as I got to the stage of getting to the under-20s as a referee, I could also then be an assistant on the top league in the NPL. And so for, I think it was maybe 2 years, I was doing both. So either alternating weeks, or on Saturday I'd ref, and on Sunday I would be the assistant on the NPL. And I think it was finding out and being at that top level in the state, and the next step up is obviously the A-League. I think I had again a really good idea of maybe again being at elite level with a lot of high quality players. That certainly was the point where I decided, okay, that's probably what I want to do moving forward. And yeah, I guess from there it's about opportunities. And for me, maybe in contrast to Alex's story, I probably I knew sort of what I wanted, but in terms of making the decision, I'd probably just come to the conclusion very quickly that that's sort of what I wanted to do, and then an opportunity was there, and all of a sudden it kind of happened. For a year or two too long, or a year or two later than he would have liked at the time. My story is probably the opposite, in that I was thrown in there because there was an opportunity, and I took it. Obviously, I wanted to take it, but I was probably a little bit too soon, to be fair, in hindsight, because I struggled a little bit in the early years, which is great. I mean, you learn so much, right? But yeah, it was a very quick decision, and I didn't stop refereeing. I was still refereeing at that point, or pursuing the referee pathway. It was just sort of my idea of what I wanted to do was give assistant refereeing sort of everything. And yeah, literally within 6 months of actually having those conversations with senior people within New South Wales, I was popped on the A-League, which was a bit of a whirlwind of a journey, and then it sort of started again with a whole new level of pressure and stuff like that, which was great fun. And yeah, certainly different today with VAR in action. We can go into a bit more depth about that, I'm sure.
Kearney, look, we had, I think it was Alicia Mears before, that we've actually had members that do become referees, but they want to concentrate just on being an AR, and somewhat, I guess, even from a local association point of view, and not ours in particular, but the focus is always on the centre referee, and somewhat, I guess, we don't focus as much on the AR. Your views on that? Is there anything wrong with being a referee, even from a young age? I actually just want to be an AR.
No, not at all. It's an important job, isn't it, Alex? It's a very important job. No. Yeah, you can tell we've known each other a while. No, absolutely. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. Because again, it's a specified role for a reason. I would say it's hugely important to still referee to some degree, though, because you need to, in order to do your job, you kind of need to understand what the person in the middle is doing, and you need to understand their job, and it needs to be fresh and relevant. Because how can I best help Alex, for example, if I don't know exactly what he's looking at or what his perspective might have been, or at least have an idea? It's not gonna. I'm not as good a referee as him. What my talent again is, my skill set is again, like I said, sitting back a little bit and analysing stuff. So yeah, I think it's hugely important to know what the job of a ref is, and so as you have to keep those skills somewhat relevant, somewhat current. But in terms of if assistant refereeing is for you and that's what you enjoy doing, by all means, I think that's hugely important.
The question then is, Alex, would you mind going through yours? And Kearney, would you mind giving
Your reaction to
a non-identifiable summary of whether you get consistent instructions from referees from one to the other?
Sure.
And how important both of you think that function is?
For me, it's two things. It's accountability and responsibility. Everyone's got to be accountable for their jobs and responsible for the decisions they're giving. If one of us fails, we all fail. One succeeds, we all succeed. So me and Kearney work together quite a lot. So obviously I go through offside, what I expect from them, like in terms of communications, what I might say to him. If it's from a defender, I'll clearly say defender. If you don't ever hear from me saying anything else, assume that it's an attacker. I don't ever say anything like deflection or played or anything, because, like I said, I'm a carpenter, less is more. And then, we talk about the offsides, with someone impacting on the keeper, line of sight, what comms I want to hear from them in and around the 18 yard. If plays in and around there and there's a player in offside position, I want him to tell me position so I know where he is. So if there's a shot, I know that I need to make a decision if he's impacting or she is impacting or not. We might talk about fouls, first 10, 15. If the game is good, let it play. If they want to kick the crap out of each other, then we'll do some refereeing. Around comms and the yellow cards, red cards, I want to hear the colour of the card first, and then I want to hear why. If he's saying yellow for stud on, versus he says yellow card because of the speed, but I know that there's speed and the contact's high, well, thank you, but I'm going to go red. It just depends on the communications. Talk around what I expect in the penalty area from these guys, what I think they can see when they're looking at it, and then everything else you leave to me. Very rarely will I go with these guys if I'm in a better position, because at the end of the day, that's my job. but there's certain things like this is obviously the A-League, and I expect a certain level of quality from them. Yeah, how do you react to that?
How do I react? Yeah. Well, yeah, in answer to your initial question, yeah, the instructions are obviously hugely important. And if I don't get them, I'll ask. So, and I may just have a few questions about, be it responsibilities in certain situations, so maybe set pieces, or maybe, and obviously keeping in mind we're obviously all mic'd up, so we're all communicating constantly as the game goes on. And just get an idea of what they're thinking and what they expect me to do on that day, outside of obviously the base level of obvious being doing my job. Alex's pre-match, regardless of how many times we might have worked together, or we may have worked together literally 3 days before, will always be the same, which is obviously really, well, to me it's really important, just because it sets us up to have there's no excuses, and everyone knows what their job sort of is, and I know what Alex expects. We also may go into a little bit more detail about team tactics, and certainly how that impacts on what we or how we are going to approach the game. And I say we because it's important for me to know what the game plan is, and how we're going to manage, or how Alex wants to manage individuals, and how we want to manage a game sort of as a product. And I know probably that may sound, when I talk about team tactics, that may sound a little bit more relevant to the elite level, but similarly, you may have something that is relevant in your local leagues, in that, the referee might have, you all know like a lot of the teams, and you get to know the players because you've been around them for so long. And it may be something simple as, I'm familiar with this person. They, a lot of the time, if they feel like they've been fouled, they might scream a little bit, and then we have a crack, and then we get on with it. And that might be relevant to me in my job. Like, that's obviously a referee's perspective. That might be relevant to me in my job again, if we're all mic'd up and we're talking, and I might think, okay, so if Alex has said to me that he expects a player to react because they feel like they've had the tiniest touch and they're going to drop and fall over and scream for a free kick, and we're not going to give it because our approach is going to have a really high bar for fouls. My job then is to make sure that Alex is aware of the optics, or aware of the bigger perception about players maybe yelling at him too much, or a lot of attention on the battle between the referee and the player, and I can feed that information through to Alex and say, well, look, maybe you need to not talk as much at this point now, because we've had this to and fro and we're not winning. Like, this player isn't calming down, or whatever. So those little things are really important to me. Is that, and look, these things might come in handy. You might have one little interesting thing to say in a game when it comes to that sort of stuff. But it's just a little thing that's there that might help us in the big moments, that stops either the player going too far and Alex has to take action, or the player getting frustrated, and then the next time the ball comes near, or a player comes near, and he smashes the opponent, and then we've got to do something about it. So it just helps him manage the individuals on the game, and that's sort of one example. But you could find plenty in terms of what the feel is from a slightly withdrawn perspective, in terms of is there balance, and all these things that we want to try and achieve. And that again is looking a little bit more towards the elite level. But to me, to be clear about what our plan, and at the elite level you have to have a plan, and I'd say at any level you have to have a plan as to how you want the game to go, and be willing to change that approach if you feel like it's not working. And again, for me, it's about being able to contribute something along those lines, if it's required, if it's not going to plan.
Sorry, can I just also comment on that? Obviously at the elite level, there's no black and white in delivering instructions, right? Some referees like to give drawn out instructions that might take 15 minutes. Some referees like to do it in 2 minutes. There's no black or white, or there's no right or wrong in regards to instructions. And also, there's no right or wrong when you deliver the instructions, where you first come to the pitch and you do the ground inspection, and you come before you start getting changed, you deliver instructions. Some people like to do it straight before you go out onto the pitch. Me personally, I was very jovial before the game and liked to muck around. Alex told the story there, but that was my approach. But 5 minutes before walking out, that was the time I switched on and I gave my pre-match instructions, and it was short and sharp to the point. And we go out because the assistant referees, in my opinion, they still have that information in their head when they walk out onto the pitch, not 1.5 hours before kickoff. So that was my approach, but everyone's different. But when we, that's obviously at the elite level when you've got time. But when you're refereeing a Premier League or local league, and there's 3 games on, you don't get much time between games, and it's really difficult to give pre-match instructions because you're worried about team sheets and you're chasing team sheets, or I know it's done on dribble now, but all this type of stuff happens and you've only got 10 or 15 minutes. So I think it's important that referees as a collective, as a group, come off together quickly, gives you time to have a rest and have a drink and that, but it's extremely important, as the 2 guys here have said, it's extremely important, at least take the 2 minutes before you walk out, that you have these pre-match instructions, because in the local league, obviously there's no comms. We're not gifted with a comms set, so you got to discuss what a penalty may look like, and the direction referee wants, what do they want to see from a flag or whatever the case may be. So it's extremely important, Rex, to your point, that is discussed before you go out. Whether it's 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, whatever it is, you have to have a discussion, in my opinion.
When you look at, Kearney, when you look at even in Park Football Association football, what are some of the attributes that you look at an assistant referee and say, oh geez, they're doing a great job? So what are the key signs, the key characteristics to a very competent AR?
Yeah, I think certainly like Alex, you've got to be in line, and to do that, you've really got to put in a shift usually. I know it might sound like a shock, but it's
give me about half a field.
Yeah.
Must be so hard.
See, I'm a good assistant, right? I create the jokes for him. Yeah, you have to be in line, and that takes effort, and that takes speed, and it takes attention to detail. I think you have to start there. You have to be concentrated. I mean, like there are games, as I'm sure you all know, that can be quite difficult, where you might not have a proper decision to make for long periods of time, and sometimes the battle is. It's very easy if you're directly involved, whether with a whistle or a flag. You've got a lot to do. I think it's very easy to stay concentrated when play is in your area or is in your half constantly, because it's a one-sided game or whatever. But I think being ready for that one decision, because that one decision will always come, and if you're not ready, and if you're not concentrated, well then that's your bread and butter. That's what you're there. It's what you're paid to do. It's what you're there to do. But it can be obviously quite hard. So you've got to find whatever works for you in terms of how you're going to make sure that you stay concentrated, you stay engaged with the game. And for me, I suppose my best approach, and probably the simplest thing you can do, is if play is down the other end and you're camped on halfway and you've been there for the last 5 minutes, obviously you've got to be watching what's happening. You've got to be mindful if the second last defender is coming back, because you don't want to be caught ball watching and then the second last defender comes back and all of a sudden you're 20 metres out and there's a break on. But if play's camped in the other half, for example, I think the best thing to do is just have an opinion on things. So and that your certainty on those things in your mind might be 5%, might be 10%, and that's something you can consider. It might be that the ball's gone out of play in front of the other assistant, and you think to yourself, okay, what would I do if I had to make a decision right now? And those skills, while they might seem insignificant at that time, if it's something you're interested in, certainly as it gets you to the higher levels, having that sort of instinctive reaction to have an opinion, and it might not be the answer, the full answer, but going to what sort of makes a very good assistant is that you may have a piece of a jigsaw puzzle that completes a full picture, and that piece might be the critical piece to help the ref get the right outcome, or help the rest of the team get the right outcome. And it starts from just that focus and that concentration, and yeah, that's what I tend to do when play is in the other half. But you could find your own ways of staying engaged or staying interested. Some people talk to themselves, some people sing, which would be annoying if you're mic'd up and you're on the other end. But yeah, everyone's different. That's my approach. But certainly, I think you just have to find a way if you are wanting to be, wanting to push in that environment. You have to find a way to constantly look interested, constantly look engaged. We can't be like these guys and just run around when we want, right? So we have to find a way to stand out in some way, and that's just going to be with your body language and with how interested you look in the game. I think that's step one, certainly.
Rob?
In terms of training stuff, how does your training differ from others?
He's full time.
The physical training, for the most part, as at a base level, is quite similar. There will be a couple of things that are more targeted towards speed and agility for assistants, whereas for referees it'll be endurance. But then, and so that's a standardised program for the national panels, as it is at the moment. And obviously we have GPS trackers, and we have to do all our sessions and log it and put in the proper effort. Otherwise they know, and they kick you in the backside if you're not putting in 100% effort on your sprints when you're supposed to. But outside of that, again, certainly for me, I am tall and gangly. I'm not built in a way that is meant for
Athletic.
Must be nice, mustn't it?
You're both the same age and he looks younger than you.
Thank you. But I have to be, I have to be, for me personally, I have to be quite careful in what I do additionally to make sure that I am, my speed and agility is up to where it needs to be. Some people don't have to work to that degree. They might focus on other things to keep their fitness up. But certainly, yeah, that's my approach, and that's what's important to me, to make sure that I am achieving what I need to achieve.
Do you have a minimum standard that you have to meet?
Yeah, so our fitness testing, I think it's still in the laws of the game book actually. But in terms of so there are, and so there's the one around the track, but then the sprint time. So again, the test is somewhat similar. The referees have to run a 40-metre sprint. The assistants have to run a 30-metre sprint. We have to do it in under 4.7 seconds. So I don't, any maths genius can tell you how fast that is in terms of kilometres. But we have to do that, and then we also have to do what is called a coda test, which is a sprint up, a sideways, and a sprint back. In a range of distances, but again, you've got to be able to sprint to a certain to meet a certain benchmark in a straight line in the 30-metre sprint, and then you have to do an agility one that involves sidestepping, so a bit more role specific, and meet that in under 10 seconds as well. So and that's pretty standard across the board, be it for Football Australia or FIFA or international tournaments, things like that.
Any other questions from the floor?
I have a question. Can you paint a picture for us on what's going through your mind when you're making a big offside call? Are you getting any other feedback from your AR at the other end?
Sorry, say that again.
Are you getting any feedback from the other
Any
AR?
feedback? Other than I hope you made a mistake, because I won't jump through too much. Yeah, no. Certainly, yeah. When you're making the offside, so when we're all mic'd up, what is very helpful is the person on the other side may say the word now when the ball's kicked, and you'd have no idea how helpful that can be when you're in either a big stadium, or it doesn't matter where you are, but the ball might be in an area which you can't see or you're not expecting it. So it really helps you take the right snapshot at the right moment when the ball's kicked, because and you may not hear it. But similarly, like in the parks, you may not hear it either, or you may not see it, because it may be a tiny small pass over the far side to you from one player to another that's 2 metres away, but that tiny pass might be to a player who's in an offside position, right? So we always think about the big kick and you can hear the contact of the ball, but sometimes that's just nobody's going to hear it unless you're right next to it. So definitely the word now will be used from one assistant who's the trailing assistant to help the person who's making the offside decision. But yeah, in terms of, and that can be hugely helpful, and it certainly saved me on a number of occasions, both in terms of just preparing, knowing something's coming, sometimes you don't, and getting the right still frame, the right photo. I think in terms of like standard offside decisions, like how you feel, yeah, like I said, I hope I'm right, yeah, because it is one of those things. It's either right or it's wrong, right? There's not really a lot of grey area in the middle. So you certainly want to be right. I think for the standard ones where it goes kick player to player, might score a goal. That's a big decision, and you might flag if you flag it for offside, hopefully correctly. Those ones less so stressful or in any way, because you've taken your snapshot, and from there you're basically waiting for the player to interfere or put the ball in the goal or do whatever they're going to do. So at that point, your decision's made at that moment where you're taking the photo. For me, if I'm second guessing it, unless there's a bit of information that I don't have, if I'm second guessing my photo, like the photo that I've taken, then I'm in trouble. But that just comes back to a lot of practice and a lot of training, because sometimes your instincts might tell you that it's offside when it's not. So it really kind of depends. But in terms of how I feel when I made a big offside decision nowadays with VAR, you're getting instant feedback. Hopefully, within 30 seconds. Yeah, I would say when it gets to the A-League, it's certainly manageable to have a full-time profession. I think the complexity comes when you're appointed to international matches, which always seem to be midweek because clubs play on weekends. So the international club competitions are midweek, and World Cup qualifiers are midweek. So all that travel is in work time.
But yeah, I don't think there's too many changeovers. Like, everyone loves what they're doing on the A-League, and everyone tries to prolong their career as long as they can. But it ends up becomes a time where like I'm lucky I don't have kids and all the rest, so my responsibilities are to my 2 dogs at home, and so life is good for me. But like for others, it becomes a time where family has to be put first and stuff. So obviously, age becomes a factor too. Like Strebre on the edge.
Okay, could you please put your hands together for Kearney Robinson? So now we come to our local Strebre Delovski. We've been privileged and blessed to have a referee of his calibre in our association here, just like you people sitting out there and us. We've had an opportunity, obviously, to be educated by Strebre as well too, and we now have obviously Strebre here in the local content and the opportunity to hear from Strebre as to, he was one of us sitting in there as a young man and worked his way to the highest level of refereeing, obviously with the FIFA badge. So Strebre will ask you your journey, how it started here in Wollongong, whether it was the Lake Heights Club, etc.
Again, like most, at 15 years old, refereeing got recommended to me for a bit of extra pocket money back then, and I joined Strebre back then. That's where I was from, and I started refereeing, and then shortly after that, I remember doing a couple of youth games, and Paul Heininger at the time, came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, I want you to come up with me to Picton to do a double line. And I said, all right, yeah, that's fantastic. I think I was 17 years old, 16, 17. But at that time, doing juniors and then coming into the senior ranks, a lot of those members are still here today. And you mentioned Rex and Stefan and Phil are here. You look up to these guys, and your dream was just to do a Premier League first grade game, And so that was my goal, and I got that opportunity when I think Rex pulled a hamstring at half time, and I think Kevin March was the other one. So that was my opportunity, and I was doing reserve grade and got the opportunity, and and I think I did okay. So I started refereeing Premier League at the time, and this whole FIFA stuff or the A-League was never even a thought at that time, because you never think that you see these guys on television, and so when I started refereeing at that level of Premier League first grade in Illawarra, a lot at the time, Alex was here and Bobby and all that were also travelling to Sydney, and giving the state league branch a run, and I thought if I'm going to make a good go of this, then that's what I have to do. So once I joined the state league branch and I started getting games there and progressing, the state titles weren't exactly what the guys here are coaching, and I was lucky enough to be one of those referees and perform pretty well. So I was earmarked as one of the guys coming through, I guess. And then back then the system was you get onto National Youth League, referee, assistant, then you become a referee, then you go assistant on the NSL, old NSL, then you become a referee. So it was almost like that was the progression, and I got to the point in the old NSL, I guess, when I was an assistant referee, and the NSL finished up in 2003, I think it was. And when the A-League came around, I was not selected in the initial panel. Interestingly enough, Simon Mikolev, who was there at the time, and Con Diomas, who were FIFA referees, had a bit of a disagreement with the hierarchy at the time, and there was a spot available, and Richard Lorenk at the time, who was head of referees, came and watched me at I think it was Blacktown and Sydney United, and had a pretty good game, had a really good game actually, and he said, you're on the A-League. And that's how it went for me. And the first year, there was an A-League and A panel and B panel at the time, and I was on the B panel, and they were guaranteed the match officials on the B panel guaranteed 2 games. And the first 2 games that season that I had were absolute shockers, absolute mares, both of them. The first one had 2 red cards. One was for second yellow for simulation. That was never seen. Matt Mackay actually was Brisbane. It was Queensland Raw. And also I think Alex was on the line with me at Central Coast versus bottom of the table clash with I think it was Wellington at the time, or Auckland Kings, whatever they call. And again there was an all-in melee. It was a melee in the last minute. So first season I had a really bad season. Second season didn't even get 1 game. And our third season was the year that basically I was told by the coaches at the time that he's too old, he's not good enough, he's not going to get another chance, etc., etc. And even our New South Wales coach at the time didn't support me, which was interesting. But we talk about, and Rex has touched on it, about communication and about teamwork. And if it wasn't for, I was doing a 4th official in Wellington for Peter Green towards the end of the season of season 3. And I was 4th official, and I saw this tackle like 3 seconds before it even occurred. And I was up off my seat, and it happened right in front of the benches, and I was on the field managing it because the referee was 10 kilometres away. And the assessor at the time gave me an excellent report and mark, and he said, if I ever get an opportunity, I want to see this guy referee. And with 4 games left to that season, season 3, 4 games left, all the guys were on FIFA duty, there was no one available, there was a couple of injuries, and I was like, I was the last man standing. And I got an opportunity, and I refereed Wellington versus Perth Glory, and I was with that assessor, that his name was John Cameron from New Zealand, and he wanted to have a look at me, and he got his opportunity, I guess, and I had an excellent game. I had 2 red cards, which were spot on, big decisions, and I nailed them. And I guess the rest is history. And I did the last 4 games of that season, and then the rest is history. So I guess that was my journey, and some of the boys have touched on about opportunity. Obviously you got to be the right place, right time. But as the guys have said, you got to put yourself there, and you got to work hard to give yourself that opportunity, and you know what, you also need a bit of luck. So obviously for me, if those guys, one of those guys didn't take the FIFA appointment, it maybe might not have happened. But at the end of the day, we hear stories of that all the time, and as young referees here and very senior referees, regardless of what level you're at, if you want to do a Premier League first grade grand final, that's your goal, and that's what you go for. If you want to be a FIFA referee or full-time referee like Alex, then you have that opportunity. So yeah, from that perspective, I think opportunities, absolutely.
And the reality is it started by Strebre being a person in the audience right here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously born and bred in Wollongong, and the other part to this is, one of the things why, a lot of people ask me, why do you do it? Why do you keep doing this? And I think it's already been touched on a number of times, and it's the camaraderie, it's the mucking around, and being involved in something that you make a big difference at. And I remember, I think I was just joining seniors at the time, and the trip away to Newcastle was something that I really looked forward to. And Stefan Jaros and Phil Torpy, got me in a corner, pinned me down, and I won't say what happened after that, but that stuff is etched in my memory because it's a bit of fun, and we do, refereeing. Like, people ask me, talks about your games that you refereed, what happened in the games, etc., what's the best go, but you don't remember much of that. What you remember is all these stories that you have a bit of a laugh with, and that's why I did it, because that was fun. And you go up and you come back to the frat after the game and you have a chat and you have a bit of a laugh, and these guys still give it to me today, that that camaraderie as we speak about, that we can have a laugh and we can talk about incidents where we've completely got it wrong, and that's funny, because a lot of the guys ring me and say, remember that game that you did and you completely screwed it up? I said, yeah, and there's that banter. So I think that's really important, and that's, I guess, why we're here today and why we like listening to stories, and we've all got stories, but I think that's what makes it fun, and I think it's really important that continues. And you guys here, it's really important that you come back to the frat as a group. It's really important that you train, and I'll probably go into this a little bit later about training, but training's one part of it. The camaraderie is just as important.
Streb, before we talk more about some intricate details about your career, you were a FIFA referee from 2009 to 2016. It tells me 2009 to 2016. So you just explained how you got to the A-League, and and you had that 1 year off. You weren't good enough, but you made it to the A-League. But then you made it as a FIFA referee. So what does it take, or how do you become a FIFA referee? There you go. And because I understand there's only a certain amount of referees that can become a FIFA referee in each country, etc. So how did that process happen? And Alex, obviously you can interlude, Kearney too.
But look, I think, Alex has his style of refereeing. He's very man-managed, player manager, whereas there's other referees that are very technical. And no referee is the same. Everyone has a different style, and my style was that type of player manager, and try to get on the players' head and use that psychology to get them on your side to then help you referee the game. And I guess that worked for me well, because the players like that, and when you're in a stadium of 40,000 people, yes, that's white noise, but you can talk whatever you want to talk to on the players, or with players. There's swearing and everything that goes on, and obviously I wouldn't recommend that at a park where there's 10 spectators, but you got to do whatever you got to do to get players on your side, right? And it's all about the psychology. I remember refereeing in Saudi Arabia, and I'm not Arabic, I can't speak the lingo, but just learning 2 or 3 words and having a joke in the tunnel with these guys, instantly to them it's like, this bloke's gone to the effort to learn the language, and it's psychology that this bloke's a good bloke type of thing, and that starts to help you in the game, because managing the game is not when you blow the whistle. Managing the game is when you receive your appointments, when you do the research, when you arrive at the ground, you say hello to the security, you say hello to the people in the canteen, you say hello to, it's just common courtesy, that all that goes a long way in managing the game at any level, whether it's grassroots under 12s or a FIFA international match.
But who gave you your badge? Like, was there one available, or did someone retire?
No, that's what the question was, actually.
Because I'm actually quite interested to know, because obviously, like we said, there's 7 FIFA badges available only for Australian refs. If all 7 are being used, you've got to wait.
So who actually selects you?
So the head of referees makes a recommendation to the referees committee, National Referees Committee, and that's the way the nomination comes. So basically, as I said, in 2008 I only did the last 4 games, and then the year after I had an amazing, I had a very, very good year where I got a semi-final, and then the year after, Mark Shield, who was interim at the time, he stepped down, and they got in a bloke called Mario van der Ende, who came in from Netherlands, interestingly, very famous World Cup referee for the senior statesman here, he came with the Dutch, I think Pim Verbeek as the coach, and he was recommended. He came here for a year to do a report on refereeing in this country. I think we're still waiting on that report, but he came here and he watched me referee, and actually he was the one that recommended I get my FIFA badge to the National Referees Committee. So yeah, it was, as Alex said, I guess there was I'm not sure which referee stepped down at the time or was going to give the badge away, but there was an opportunity at the time, and again, it's all about timing. And as Alex said, if there's 7 referees, FIFA referees, and they're young referees and take that badge, and you're coming through at that same time, you might not get an opportunity. Not because you're not good enough as a referee, or you're probably better than the next crop of referees coming through, but it just might be a timing issue that you might not get it. That's just the way the system works. And if there's no spots available, well, you have to wait. Simple as that.
From an AR point of view, as far as FIFA spots are concerned?
How many people?
Yeah. So
With
for
AR.
the assistants,
Sorry, excuse me.
there are 9 on the A-League, from the A-League men's competition. There are 9 spots. So what did you say? There was 6 referees and 9.
Seven.
So Australia have 7
Yes.
7 referee spots, 9
And
ARs
and 9
on the FIFA panel.
You actually refereed the 2010 Grand Final. I think it was Sydney Melbourne, wasn't it? What was the experience like? You recall it?
Yeah, I remember it very well actually. It was obviously the biggest game domestically for me in my career, I guess, that grand final. Well, there's a lot of derbies obviously, but that was most memorable. But there was a lot of pressure at the time on me because every grand final leading up to that, there was controversy. Early days of the A-League where there was, Danny Vukovic, or there was a red card in the 20th minute, and then Melbourne victory in Adelaide, the history with that, and this was Melbourne victory in Sydney FC, so the big blue, big derby, and that was the grand final in Melbourne with 45,000 people. So that leading up to the match, I always had that in my mind that, when I got the call like Alex and Kearney, that I started to prepare for the game, and we had some interesting characters then, and my friend Kevin Muscat was one of those, as we talk about players, but interestingly, there was a mutual respect there. But again, as Alex said and Kearney, you got to do whatever you got to do to manage the game at that level, right? It's not just that level; it's any level. And I remember refereeing a Illawarra Premier League game, and Claude Cellini at the time, very experienced player in the local league. And I learnt this, and I still remember it, that I came in, young referee, and I thought that I would assert my authority by calling him over and started to yell at him. Well, not yell at him, I raised my voice in the sense that, look, don't do that. He then came back with experience, went a bit more above me, then I went above him, and then he went above me, and then I had to caution him. Now, that's not good player management, right? So I always remembered that, and refereeing that game, one of the key things was in the first half particularly, we talk about tactics and preparation and viewing how they play, etc. Ernie Merrick, who was the coach of Melbourne Victory at the time, in the first half particular, any big foul, crowd the referee. That was a tactic that Melbourne Victory used. So it was to put pressure on me to give yellow cards, etc., etc. So any time there was a big foul, everyone would come running in from Melbourne Victory. So we spoke about it at half time as a team, and we said, well, this can't happen again. And in the tunnel, I remember speaking to Ernie and Kevin at the time, walking out and said, this ain't happening again. The way you start the game will reflect what happens. So it's important to adjust accordingly. If you start to see the temperature rise, then you got to adjust accordingly, and you got to pull things out of your kit to let these things out. So, for example, I mean, games where the temperature's rising and there's a player going on the ground, you don't looking to play advantage or get the game going quickly or whatever. You've got to kill the game, call the trainer on if you have to, just call the trainer on. Don't even ask the player, do you need attention? Just call the player on, and you need that minute, 2 minutes for the game to cool down to manage it. The way you talk to players, it's important. I think I've done it a couple of times here where the referee's the conducting the orchestra. When there's a big decision to be made, everyone's looking at the referee. So you got to use strong body language to sell it. It's as simple as that. That's no different to penalty situations, throwing, talking to players, because when the next decision happens, whether it's a yellow card or red card, the reaction by the spectators and all the other key stakeholders are, referee didn't have a choice. So it's about managing the game, and I think that's been my style. The European style is very player manager, manage the game, do whatever you need to do. In AFC at the time it was very technical. That's a yellow card, that's a yellow card, that's a red card, that's a red card, and it's very technical. I see Australia, we always followed AFC, and that's generally a FIFA type approach, but what I've witnessed in the last probably the last decade, I'd say, 5 years in particular, I reckon we're moving towards a more player manager type of scenario in AFC in Australia, because the technical stuff is, whilst you got to give a yellow card when you need to give a yellow card, but
you have a responsibility to the game. Like, you've both refereed A-League Grand Finals and officiated obviously as an AR. You have a responsibility to the game as a referee? I know it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, but I mean, like Alex said, we don't want to be the centre of attention, right? At any level, referees don't want to be the centre of attention. So it's important that we go out, we referee the game, you see what you see, you don't make stuff up. You see what you see, you give it, but you've got to manage the game. So, I mean, you got to think about, I call it the smell of the game, and everyone laughs at me about this, but I get commentators now doing this smell of the game stuff, but it's something that's not written in the laws of the game, or the temperature of the game. If it starts to rise, and you feel that, you got to feel that the temperature's rising and tackles are flying in, where you got to, you may need to use a yellow card in that particular situation, even though it's probably not a yellow card offence, if that makes sense. Kicking the ball away at 5-0 in the 89th minute, can you have managed it? Because the other part to this, and I was probably going to touch on it a bit later, but I'll touch on it now, is as referees, we live in a bubble, right? All we know and all we care about is refereeing and getting that decision right. That's a red card, no it's not, yes it is. That's a yellow card, no it's not, that's a penalty, no it's not. But I guess over time, and being head of referees and with Football Australia, and also now at my time at the Wolves, we're only a small piece of the jigsaw puzzle, the referees. And when you're giving a yellow card or a red card, or what, there's other things that happen as a result of that, right? For example, if you're going to give a yellow card, and some people might say that, oh, that's a soft yellow card, and you don't get to manage it. Well, that yellow card may mean that that player misses the next round because they're on 5 yellow cards, which means that's the last round, they don't get into the top 5, which means that the coach gets sacked. So it has a flow-on effect, what happens in our decisions. So as referees, we need to see the bigger picture. We're a small part of the game, right? Even though we think that we're it, right? We're the referees and nothing else matters. Well, you know what? Being in the game a long time at all levels, the referee's decisions are critical in what goes on in football after that. And, when coaches blow up and all this, everyone's under pressure. Referees are under pressure. Everyone's under pressure. But at the end of the day, just think about managing the game, and if you can get away with not giving a yellow card, don't give the yellow card. Don't just give a yellow card because technically it's right. But does the game need it? Does the game need the yellow card? So, something to think about anyway.
Phil, are you busting to say something there? Alex, last year's grand final. Do you have a responsibility to the game and the spectacle itself? Is that ever in the back of your mind? I could be making a decision that's going to tip this thing upside down, and I've got an audience of hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, for sure. I think as referees, sometimes it's better to do nothing than something. I know that sounds really weird, but I think we get ourselves into more trouble when we do something that's a little bit out of, that's a bit unexpected and stuff. But if we don't do something, like we miss a yellow card or we don't give that yellow card, big whoop, who cares? It's when you end up giving a yellow, it might be soft, and then you go and give a second one and they go, oh, the first one should never have been sent off, and then you make the game all about yourself. So sometimes, who cares if you miss that yellow card? So yeah, you do have, yeah.
Strebre, according to the bio here, it was a unique in 2017. You were the first with the advent of VAR. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, look, it's interesting, and everyone's got a view on VAR, right? And I'll probably summarise this in a couple of minutes. But look, when I retired in 2016, and again, the timing was VAR was being brought in at the time. So they asked me to be, I guess, the face of the VAR in Australia, because I was still a FIFA referee, just finished, and the timing was that was coming in and it worked well. So I'd agreed to that, and then obviously, yeah, Australia was the first to go live with VAR in the first league. So I was probably lucky enough to do that. But look, with VAR, I'm a traditionalist as well, and I had questions, and everyone around the world has a different view on VAR. But I'll give you my view on VAR. The first question you've got to ask yourself is, with all the decisions, the Diego Maradona handball, the Thierry Henry handball that sent France to the World Cup, all these howlers that referees miss, make mistakes, the question I have for everyone in this room is, would you want the opportunity to fix that? And every single person in this room would say yes. Every single person, no doubt. So with that in mind, right, VAR is brought in to do good, right? That's first and foremost. Over time, the VAR was brought in to fix the howler. And this is where it gets a bit grey in regards to what's a howler, right? And there's frustration out there as to, well, we had that this week, well, why wasn't it given this week, etc., etc. Now, there's different thresholds of when to get involved. So, the English Premier League might have a different threshold to the Spanish League, to Australia. There are different thresholds of when to get involved. When the A-League first brought it in, the threshold we set at the time was we wanted it to be extremely high to get involved as a VAR. And this is the issue with VAR. And for those people that always say we want consistency, ain't going to happen. Why? Because it's all about opinions. If we look at a penalty incident, for example, the question is not, is that a penalty or not a penalty? The question from a VAR perspective is that an absolute howler that I need to get involved? Now, my opinion of a howler is going to be different to Kearney's opinion, different opinion to Alex's opinion on what is a howler. So it's extremely difficult for these guys to switch off from being referees and assistants to say that's right or wrong, as to now being in the VAR room and to say that is an absolute howler. And this is where you're never going to get consistency, and that's why there will always be debate. It's no different to handball. You can write whatever you want to write in the law book about handball. Natural position, unnatural, deliberate, not deliberate, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever you want to call it, you're never going to get consistency because every single decision, every single incident is different. And that's as simple as that. If you think about VAR in a match, how many times does the referee go to the screen? Really? 2, once, twice, max in a game? Maybe none. But let's say when VAR is used, right? It's once in a game, twice in a game, right? Which might go for 2 minutes, 1 minute, whatever. You ask any of the players, what do you think of VAR? Don't give a shit as long as you get the decision right. We're talking about howlers. Should be talking about howlers. We're talking about decisions that could potentially change the game. If we get an opportunity to fix it, let's fix it. The big piece on this, which I tried to do when I was head of referees at the time, the big piece is about education. People don't understand how VAR is used, therefore they assume, therefore there's social media and everything gets out and people have a whinge, right? The way VAR is meant to be used is to fix the howler, fundamentally. In my opinion, should be set a high bar in when to get involved. And then at that point, still going to be issues because it's an opinion. The only part in our game that's black and white is offside, right? And people say VAR got involved, it's a millimetre offside. Well, it's offside. It's not a toe or a half a metre, give them half a metre. What happens if it's half a metre and a centimetre? Like, at what point do you stop? So offside is offside, black and white, whether it's that much, a metre. So people, I think it's just about an education piece, and it wasn't done well in the first couple of years in regards to education, and I think we are where we are now with VAR. But I think slowly people are starting to understand it, but I think there's still a piece there regarding VAR.
And gentlemen, can I ask you, because I know, Phil, you're a great advocate of it, obviously we don't have the luxuries of VAR. We're told, go with your first instincts, and with no VAR there with us, I'm quite often one that goes with their first instincts, because that's the way we've been educated. What's your views on that when you don't have VAR?
Yeah, just trust yourself. Like, we don't, like, that's like, you're going to be wrong, like 3 out of 100. But most of the time we actually are right, we actually are correct with what we do. So don't ever question yourself, because who cares about the 3 in 100? I'd rather get 97 out of 100 right. So always just back yourself, because that's when you normally, and you're always right. So, yeah, if you don't have VAR, which I know you won't, just stick with your guns.
But with VAR, Peter, these guys still have to give, it's not, there's a decision, let me think about it, I've got VAR, I'll just leave it. They still referee the way they referee. There's a decision, they've got to make a decision. It's as simple as that. It's not because we have VAR, I'm going to referee a different way. These guys referee the same way if they're refereeing Illawarra Premier League, A-League or a FIFA match. You referee it the same way.
We're going to have to wrap this up. I'm getting a wrap-up call here because the boss here is saying we need to wrap this up.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to catch up with previous episodes covering a wide variety of community football topics.